StudyIQ IAS, अब तैयारी हुई अफोर्डेबल।
नमस्कार दोस्तों, वेलकम टू StudyIQ IAS। दोस्तों, जैसे कि हम सब जानते हैं यूपीएससी की एग्जामिनेशन में 3 स्टेजेस हमें देखने को मिलती हैं, जिसमें सबसे पहले प्री, फिर मेंस और आखिर में आता है पर्सनैलिटी टेस्ट। ऐसे में इंटरव्यू आने वाले हैं या फिर पर्सनैलिटी टेस्ट की डेट्स बहुत नजदीक आती जा रही हैं। मेंस का रिजल्ट ऑलमोस्ट आउट होने वाला है, तो बहुत सारे ऐसे लोग हैं जो कि ऑलरेडी मेंस में अपीयर हो चुके हैं और आने वाले समय में पर्सनैलिटी टेस्ट के लिए अपीयर होने की प्लानिंग कर रहे हैं। आज हम ये समझने की कोशिश करेंगे कि जब आप पर्सनैलिटी टेस्ट स्टेज के लिए प्रिपेयर करते हैं तो आपकी क्या अप्रोच होनी चाहिए, बोर्ड आपसे क्या चाहता है, और आज हम ये सब जानेंगे हमारे पूर्व रिटायर्ड आईएएस ऑफिसर श्री अनिल स्वरूप सर से। आई वेलकम यू सर टू द शो। थैंक यू फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस सर।
थैंक यू
सर, शुरुआत करते हैं सर। सबसे पहले मैं ये आपसे पूछना चाहूंगा कि जब हम तैयारी कर रहे हैं इंटरव्यू की या पर्सनैलिटी टेस्ट की, टू से इट बेटर वे, क्या अप्रोच होनी चाहिए हमारी प्रिपेयर करते टाइम?
सबसे पहले तो आई एम ग्लैड दैट यू आर यूजिंग द टर्म पर्सनैलिटी टेस्ट टाइम एंड अगेन, एंड दैट शुड बी अंडरस्टूड वेरी क्लियरली बाय दोज दैट क्वालिफाई the main exam for the personality test, because what is going to happen before the board is not an interview, and there is a difference between interview and personality test, and that difference is that the board is looking at the overall personality of an individual, not merely how well informed he is. Of course, that is one of the major components, that a person should be indeed be well informed, but much more than that, much beyond that, meaning thereby that the board is also looking at how do you approach issues, how positive you are, and things like that. Many such factors are taken into account before board comes to a conclusion about you.
So sir, when we prepare for personality test, when does the preparation start? So generally this is the first question that appears in the mind.
I think the preparation should start yesterday.
Okay.
The mains exam result is still not out. It could be out any day, but I don't think those that have appeared in the main exam should wait for the result to come out, because if they prepare appropriately, it will benefit them irrespective whether they called for the interview or not. And there are two parts to this. One is preparing for the interview and preparing for the day of the interview. How do you conduct yourself on the day of the interview? So these two have to be understood very clearly, that you have to equip yourself in a manner that you are able to answer questions fluently, logically, rationally at the time of the interview. For that, advanced preparation is required. There are many attributes that you have to develop in the next couple of months before the interview happens. And second, you should be conversant with what happens on the board. And hence, it is very important first to understand what is the board looking for. It's like any product that you market. When any company markets a product or produces a product, it looks at the consumer and looks at what is the requirement of that consumer, and then designs the product accordingly. Same is the case with personality test. We must understand clearly what does the board want. And that has to be understood very clearly for preparing. Because if you don't understand it correctly, you'll probably end up preparing in a wrong manner. So this has to be understood very clearly.
When we are saying that we have to understand what board wants, so could you please explain कि actual में board चाहता क्या है?
देखिए, पहली चीज, कई लोगों को एक गलतफहमी होती है. Many people are on this erroneous impression that they're going to test your knowledge. My understanding of interview is, or personality test is, that the knowledge has already been by and large tested in the written exam. Now the board is looking at your attitude, your approach, your communication skills, your positivity. These are things they are looking at. So one has to prepare for that rather than knowledge. Of course, you have to upgrade your knowledge, what's going on, but don't be obsessed with it. I mean, I have been suggesting to many aspirants that don't go and spend your time on reading what you had an optional as a paper, because that has already been tested. They are going to test your awareness as compared to knowledge, how aware you are. If you are aware, and that can be determined by the answers that you give, so awareness levels have to be there. And most important is, how do you convey and communicate what you know to the board? And finally, how does it appear? Do you appear as a balanced person? Do you appear as a positive person? Or you are negative in your disposition? These are the things that the board is looking at.
Okay, so one thing is attitude, that we must have a positive attitude. That is what you're saying, sir. But when we come to the personality traits, what all other things are there? जैसे कि attitude आपने कहा सर, क्या इसके अलावा अगर हमें कुछ enlist करनी हो चीजें, तो और क्या क्या चीजें इसमें आ जाती हैं?
सबसे महत्वपूर्ण जो है इसमें स्थिति कि कई बार हमारे मस्तिष्क में सब कुछ होता है यहाँ पर है। तो रिटन एग्जाम में तो आपको ये अभ्यास होना चाहिए कि आप उसे लिख सकें ठीक से। पर्सनालिटी टेस्ट में ये अभ्यास होना चाहिए आप उसको बोल सकें। ये मेनी पीपल आर नॉट स्पॉन्टेनियस इन देयर स्पीच, दे डू नॉट हैव सच oral communication skills to convey what they have in mind, and hence it is important to develop those skills. I have been emphasizing this time and again that everyone should work on improving the communication skills. It is not merely helpful to them in this personality test. God willing, most of them will make it to the civil service. In the civil service, communication skills assume a very important role. So irrespective of this personality test, obviously it will help them. They should work religiously on improving their communication skills. That is one. That's very, very important. Second, apart from improving their communication skills, they should be able to present their point of view logically and rationally. Third, they should be able to present their views in a balanced manner. And finally, they should appear to be positive, meaning thereby they are looking for solutions. They may not have solutions. Let us understand this very clearly. Sometimes there will be questions asked to solve problems. I mean, it is not expected of an officer to know everything and solve every problem under the sun. But what the board is looking at is, how do you approach the problem? Is your approach appropriate? Are you working out practicable, rational, reasonable approach to finding solutions? Solution may or may not come. So, for example, if the board member asks you, do you have a solution to Kashmir problem? There can't be a very simple answer to that, because had there been an easy solution to the problem, it would have been found by now. There is a problem there. But if a person presents before the board the entire Kashmir issue and analyzes it well and then suggests, so it's very important. And finally, the person who's answering, who's being interviewed, is not expected to know everything under the sun. This has to be understood very clearly. If he realizes this fact, it will give him enormous confidence. He is not supposed to have an answer to everything. There will be occasions where he may not have an answer. He should be candid enough, he should be humble enough to admit the fact that he doesn't know the answer. And here, what is important is facts and views. Now, my suggestion to all those that will be appearing in the personality test is, never fib on a fact. If you know a fact, state it. If you don't know a fact, admit that you don't know the fact. Don't try and guess a fact until unless, and there would be occasions where the board will ask you to guess, then you can guess. But this is very important. And one more point before I conclude on this aspect is, since many people do not know final answers to these solutions, to the problems, I think use of terms like, in my limited understanding of the issue, most probably will convey an impression that though you have a point of view, that is not a final point of view. Obviously, a person who's 25, 20, 30 years of age cannot be expected to have finality on issues. So you can have a point of view, but you have to keep your mind open in terms of receiving other suggestions, points of view. That also should come out in your answers.
Okay. So just to make it more clear, since you mentioned that we have to use certain kind of, terminology, and when we have some tough questions in front of us, there, sir, it becomes even more important. So मान लीजिए, if this is asked कि what according to you is the solution for the Kashmir issue, किस तरह से स्टूडेंट को इसे अप्रोच करना चाहिए? I mean, with the very beginning only by using that.
तो अगर मुझसे प्रश्न कोई करता है कि कश्मीर की समस्या का क्या समाधान हो सकता है, तो I will start by saying, in my limited understanding of the issue, because I would admit before the board that it's such a complex issue that no one can claim to have understood all the dimensions of the issue. So there is no harm in starting or opening your statement by saying, in my limited understanding of the issues, these are the aspects that require to be looked into. Fortunately, the government has already taken care of some of them. There are other aspects like taking people along, taking them into confidence. Probably if they do that, I'm using the term probably, because again, I am not giving a finality to the solution that I am giving. What I am trying to say is, this is my understanding of the issue. That will leave actually a door open somewhere, because there could be occasions, normally it doesn't happen that way, but there could be occasions where you are pushed to the wall on something that you've said. And then if you don't have a door open, then you wouldn't know where to run. So you can always say, sir, my opinion is based on the facts that I know of. If there are more facts brought forth, then maybe I will rethink about my views. It is not that I'm not sure about my views, but what I'm saying is I'm sure about my views on the basis of the facts at my command. If additional facts come to the fore, then I have an open mind. So you will not appear as a fickle person. You will not appear as a person who keeps changing his views. What you are saying is your opinion is based on the facts that you've come to know so far. And if more facts come to light, and facts are facts, they are incontrovertible facts. That's why I said in the beginning, we must clearly understand the difference between facts and views. Views are based on facts. So some more facts come to light, you can obviously think in terms of rethinking about your views that you have.
Terminology is very important, starting from the terms like in my humble opinion, in my limited understanding. This creates a huge difference. So sir, when we talk about personality test, there are some other issues also involved. Basically, students are involved in the confusion of choosing a hobby. Is hobby something which is to be chosen on the stage of interview or PT, or is it something which should be actually there? What should be the approach?
Let us understand what a hobby means. What is hobby? Because many people don't understand what hobby is and write something there. Hobby is something which you do in your free time and you enjoy doing. It's a very simple definition. You enjoy it, but you do it in free time. It's not your usual curriculum. So some people read, some people listen to music, some people watch movie, some people go and play. It could be a hobby. That's a hobby. It's not your profession. That's the difference between a hobby and a profession or a curriculum. So I have yet to come across a person who doesn't have a hobby. But sometimes he doesn't know what his hobby is. He is inadvertently or unconsciously doing something which is enjoying it, because everyone has free time. I don't think anybody doesn't have. Some people daydream. That can be a hobby. Some people flick channels of television. That can be a hobby. Some people use this. This can be a hobby. They're just browsing things here. So this is what they're doing during their free time. That's their hobby. But when you write a hobby there in your DAF, and one has to be careful, because there are chances of questions being asked on what you write in DAF. And that is where you must understand what to write there. Now, you don't have to be an expert in the field where you have a hobby. There's a difference between being an expert and just a hobby. Hobby is something which you enjoy. I'll give you an example. Not in the IAS interview, but in some other interview, I had written music as my hobby. So one of the person who was interviewing me asked me, can you sing, Mr. Swarup? Now, this was a tough question, So I said, sir, I'm a Kansen, not a Tansen. So that said, everyone started laughing. So you have to know how to get out of it. And then I explained. I said, sir, I don't understand the difference between sa, re, ga, ma. I don't know the swars. But I enjoy listening to music. That's what hobby is. Hobby doesn't mean that you become an expert. You know Rag Bhairavi from Rag Bhairav. What are this? Kisme swar kaun se? From teen tal to saat tal. You don't have to understand the difference between the beats. It's basically you enjoy experiencing what you are listening. That's what hobby is all about. Sometimes people take hobbies very seriously, and that's where the trouble is. You take it seriously and then you try and become an expert in that area. So some people say that if you say that you enjoy reading, if reading is your hobby, then obviously you should be able to tell which is the last book you read. You can't get away with that. You can't write reading as your hobby without being able to explain what you read the last. So otherwise they will take it amiss. But you don't have to critically analyze every book. You can't become an expert reviewer of books. You enjoy reading, you read it. You may still review it. I have reading as my hobby. I review books. But it is not necessary for you to review books. So we must be very careful about what we write as a hobby, because we have to have some rudimentary knowledge of that area, but you don't require expertise. This has to be understood very clearly.
So, sir, ये एक्चुअल में देखा जाता है स्टूडेंट्स में कि when they have to write their hobby, वो एक अपने आप में बहुत बड़ी एक्सरसाइज बन जाता है, and इतना ज़्यादा उसमें mental exercise जाता है that we.
No, I can suggest that once you qualify for the interview, you appear in one of the interactive sessions. I'll tell you what. Because once I discuss with an individual, I can indicate what his hobby could be. And then he will accept that as his hobby. The reason is that sometimes, as I said, we are not fully conversant with ourselves. We are going for a personality test, but we don't know ourselves. When you discuss with somebody, then probably your real worth or real aspects, they come out. And then you recognize, okay, oh yes, this is my hobby. This is what I do. You don't realize it. You do it in your free time, you do something.
सर बट एक एडिशनल क्वेश्चन यहाँ पे जो राइज होता है वो ये कि सर जैसे आपने कहा कि वी हैव टू बी वेरी मच कॉन्शियस अबाउट राइटिंग आवर हॉबी, वी कैन नॉट राइट एवरीथिंग. Is it the fact that let's say if I am very much interested in watching movies and at the other hand there is someone else who is always into yoga and all these things, so क्या इसका impression सामने वाले पे जाता है?
एक चीज बड़ा स्पष्ट समझ लीजिए, डैफ से आपको कोई इंप्रेशन नहीं बनता, डैफ से आपको नंबर नहीं मिलते. जो आप वहां बोलेंगे, जो आप कहेंगे उस पर नंबर मिलेगा. कई लोग समझते हैं हम डैफ में बड़ी बड़ी चीजें लिख दें, हमने ये तीर चलाया, ये तोप चलाई, ये किया वो किया. मैं मजाक में लोगों से कहता हूँ इट्स लाइक बंदर को अस्तुरा थमाना, वह हजामत बनाएगा. सोच समझ के लिखिए क्या लिख रहे हैं आप डैफ में, वेरी केयरफुली. डैफ गिव्स द लेवरेज टू द बोर्ड मेंबर्स टू आस्क यू क्वेश्चंस, नथिंग लेस नथिंग मोर. What you write in DAF doesn't give you marks. How you speak, how you conduct yourself is the most important thing. DAF is something which is available with the board for them to ask questions on. But you don't get marks on the basis of DAF. It is purely on the basis of how you respond to the questions that are asked of you.
सर अभी आपने एक और इशू उठाया, that was self awareness, कि जब एक व्यक्ति self aware है then he knows his hobbies also. But yes, self-awareness, again, when we are preparing for UPSC, we are aware about everything, right? We are studying everything. But self-awareness, एक ऐसी चीज आ जाता है सर जो मिस कर जाते हैं.
You know, there I think mentors are help. Mentors help you to understand yourself. You know, sometimes we are oblivious of our strengths and weaknesses, and someone else who knows me well enough should be able to enable me to understand who I am, what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses. And that's where mentors play a very, very important role. Sometimes we are not aware of what we are. And I've seen a number of individuals who are strong in a particular area, they're not even aware of that. And they don't first realize that they have certain weaknesses. When they realize, they don't accept that they have their weaknesses. So it's a bit of a problem there. And hence, the role of mentors is very important, because mentor is your well-wisher. He tries to understand you and acts as a mirror to you. And a good mentor does precisely that. He shows you the mirror where you stand. And there you can then identify your... I mean, a mentor can tell you what your hobby is, help you identify your hobby. You may having a hobby, but you may not be realizing that's your hobby. That's what mentor does.
So, self-awareness एक ऐसा, important exercise है जो personality test से पहले हमें अपने आप में झांकना चाहिए.
It's very important. Let me give you some examples. There was, since I guide a number of people, I remember a couple of them used to stammer and they didn't know what to do. And the more they are aware about their stammering, the more they stammered. So now, a psychologist can help him on how to get over that stammering. Of course, it can't be done in 2 months' time. Perhaps it can. It takes a longer time. But if you, I spoke to some of them and I understood, if you could understand the cause of stammering, and in one case at least I found that gentleman wanted to speak everything quickly. So I asked him to pause and read, first of all, very slowly. Speak very slowly. Get into the habit of not trying to speak fast. And sure enough, he got over his stammering. It worked in that case. It may not have worked. But if you understand a person and a weakness in a particular manner, like for example, some people have this habit of using the word I know very frequently. In the sentence, they will say I know 5 times. Now, that's a weakness which he is not aware, because it is a reflection of his personality. He's using I know twice in a sentence. So then someone will have to sit with him, point out again, and see how he could overcome that. Through practice, it can be done. We all have our phrases, typical phrases, which we tend to use in our conversation, which we don't realize that I'm using it so often. So these are things that get pointed out by mentors or well-wishers who will then help you to overcome them.
But again, there is some point in saying that we need to have good understanding of our subjects also. How do you see this?
I started this conversation by mentioning that we must understand the difference between knowledge and awareness. Okay. Knowledge, as I said, has already been tested in the written examination. So you don't have to too much bother about your knowledge. But awareness is different. What is happening around you, what is happening in the country, what is happening in the world, what is happening in the place where you live, where you spend your time, what is happening in the state where you come from. These are things that a person should know. And that reflects on his awareness levels. So much more important than knowledge for the purpose of personality test is you being aware of not only yourself, but those around you.
Okay.
So what is right, what is wrong? You may not pass a value judgment, you shouldn't be, but you should know what's going on. So for example, if you are coming from say UP, so you should know what is happening on the political front. You may not have a political opinion, but if an event has taken place in UP, what are the basic parameters of the state? What are the development parameters? What are the major problems of the state? How state is attempting to overcome those problems? This is awareness. So that awareness has to be there. So you have to be aware of the place from where you come. You have to be aware of the college where you've studied. If there are events associated with that college, that place, you should be aware of that. So that awareness levels has to be consciously developed. Some people have this habit of being inquisitive. They try and go and find out what's going on. It helps them. But some people are laid back. They're not inquisitive. So their awareness levels come down. So that has to be developed. You have to be aware.
One more question comes from this, sir. Sir, when we study for current affairs, let's say in the mains examination, we study newspapers. Is there any change in approach of studying newspaper and everything, current affairs, when we prepare for interview or PT?
I don't see a major difference. The only difference is your articulation of those issues has now to be verbal. So awareness levels will be the same as you're preparing for the mains exam, but your articulation changes. And for that, it is a part of the larger communication exercise. I've been advising those that qualify for the civil service to constitute into small groups of 5, 6. Now, these days, it's very easy. You can have a WhatsApp group and have a discussion on a current topic every day. And the suggestion is that a topic get assigned to an individual in that group. He speaks on that topic for 10 minutes. Sure enough, in a personality test, no one is going to ask you speak for 10 minutes, but your articulation will improve if you do that. So that person prepares for that topic and speaks for 10 minutes. And then the other gentlemen, they give their comments, and then there is an open discussion. Now, this will enable them to first think logically, present logically, rationally, and improve their diction. Once that happens, then what they have to say comes naturally to them. That can be practiced. I think it can improve in 2 months. Most of them have around 1.5 to 2 months time before the interview happens, before the personality test happens. So they should get down to this daily discussion religiously. It has to be done every day. So it will benefit them first in terms of greater awareness of that particular issue, in terms of the details and analysis of that issue you develop analytically, and most importantly, your articulation improve, your communication skills improve. So you will be able to naturally speak out without consciously thinking about it. Initially, yes, you have to do it consciously. So as I said, my mother tongue was Hindi. So to begin with, I used to translate mentally everything from Hindi to English and then speak out in English. But if you get into the habit of thinking in English, so the suggestion that I give to those aspiring to become civil servants and have qualified for the personality test is that they should start thinking in the language that they're going to speak. Again, they have to make a conscious effort. Initially, there will be problems, but then over a period of time, they will start thinking in that particular language. Their diction will become spontaneous. Their communication will become spontaneous. That seamless flow of thought to speech, as in case of seamless flow from thought to writing in mains exam, has to be developed over a period of time.
Okay, so sir, one thing that I can make out of this point is that group discussions are going to play a good role.
Critical role.
Yes.
And it may not be, usually people say that it is not in the personality test format. People favor personality test mock interviews. No? I am in favor of group discussions, as many as you can, because you then start explaining an issue in a logical manner. And then there will be people to point out whether you were logical or not logical, whether you were using terms like in my limited understanding of the issue, most probably, and things like that, whether you're using a particular phrase very regularly without meaning. We have this habit of using those phrases. All this will come out in those discussions. So after you had formal discussion, then you can have an informal discussion as to who went wrong, where you can take notes and start improving upon it.
And even, quick feedback is also there, and, counter questions are also there,
yes,
which are very much probably asked in interview also, right? So, sir, that is there. Now, when we come to your preparation, sir, when you appeared for interview, I would like to know your experience for the first time when you appeared and you got selected into IPS. What was your experience and how was it different from the second time?
Oh, it was very different. In fact, my position in the merit list, it was determined by my marks in the interview, in the personality test. In the first year, I got 55%. In the second year, I got probably the highest in the country, which was 80%. And what was the difference? Difference was that in the first year, I was very conscious. I was a bit nervous. I was not so well prepared. I was more focused on knowledge than awareness. I had not practiced my articulation so well. In the second year, the advantage that I had was I was undergoing training at the police academy. And there, a number of officers had got selected for the personality test for the IAS. So we formed into a group. And we used to, something which I was suggesting, we used to have group discussion every day on one of the current topics. That really helped me improve my articulation. Then, of course, I had also started practicing reading editorials aloud, again to improve my articulation, again to have be more aware of the happenings around me. Also, how to present a view logically, rationally, and all this helped me in the second year. So in second year, I was much more in control of myself. I also understood the difference between facts and views, because first year, when I couldn't answer some question, I became nervous. In the second year, I thought if I don't know an answer, I will tell them I don't know an answer. As simple as that. If I don't know a fact, I will tell them I don't know a fact. That gave me enormous amount of confidence. You know, confidence is the key here. None of aspirant is expected to know everything about everything. There will be a large number of issues on which you are not aware of the fact. If you are humble enough to admit, and it does not destroy your confidence, you say that I don't know, because many people don't know many things. I also don't know many things. So it is treated as a usual occurrence rather than unusual occurrence with me, because if I take it as an unusual occurrence, I'll feel nervous. If I know that I don't know, others also don't know, then it's very usual occurrence. So I say I don't know. So you have to be candid enough, which I was in the second year. First year, I got nervous on issues on which I didn't know an answer. Second year, I didn't know answer for as many questions, maybe 25% questions, and I flatly said, I'm sorry, sir, I'm not aware. Very fair. It could be actually a positive point for you, because you have the courage of conviction to say no. You have the humility to say no, and you are admitting the fact that you don't know everything. However, what you know well. So it's not that you don't know anything. You know what you know, but you also don't know a few things which you can admit. So that was the critical difference. So I was much more in control of myself during the second year. And of course, there were other things like, in the first year, I went wearing a suit. Someone advised that I should go in suit, and I was very uncomfortable. I don't know whether that mattered or not. Second year, it was a month of, I remember it was April, late April. It was pretty warm. Next year, I went a nice white shirt and a pant. I went there and spoke as well as I could. So there's so many things that take into account. But confidence is everyone is nervous. I shouldn't be saying that you wouldn't be nervous going to the interview. But what can you do as a preparatory work to see that nervousness is reduced? First, important is never think that you should know everything. You're not supposed to know everything. Second, this is, as I'm repeating it, it is not a test of your knowledge. It is a test of your personality. And everyone has some negative, positive traits. So if you are aware of the fact that you are not a perfect individual, you may have your problems, then it will give you enormous amount of confidence.
So, sir, this point automatically answers my next question, which I was going to ask, is that does the board take no for an answer?
It depends. On facts, if you don't know a fact, it's better to admit that you don't know a fact, and don't give a number or a date until you know that. There are occasions when board push you to take a guess. Then you can take a guess, because then it's not your fault. They've asked you to take a guess. You take a wild guess, right or wrong, doesn't matter. So board does take no for an answer. It is not necessary for you to answer all questions. But what board is looking at is not yes or no. What they are looking at again as a personality. Does this person have the humility to accept the fact of not knowing something? That's a very positive signal. Obviously, if you don't know anything, then there's a problem. But you've qualified for the written exam, no? So you know a lot. It's not that you don't know. There will be certain areas where you're not fully aware.
So, sir, one more important topic that I would like to initiate here is that when we prepare for mains, ethics GS paper 4 is a 250 marks different subject altogether. When we prepare for a personality test, how much role does ethics play in this personality test?
Very important role. You know, the board member, to my understanding, is also gauging your ethical and moral values. They're gauging it. And in many cases, they will give you certain cases, and they will ask your response just to gauge how you look at it. You may have done your ethics paper, that's a different matter altogether, but they will still give you some cases there and they will seek your opinion. And the fundamental logic remains the same as you've done there. There you've written it, you'll have to speak it out here. But I know of a number of candidates who've been asked such questions, and they're presented with a case study and they were asked to answer that question. Here again, you have to present your case very logically and you should appear to be an ethical person. And if you are not, then ultimately, I don't know what happens in the service. Some people do become ethical, some don't. But fact of the matter is, as you're entering the service, it is expected of a young aspirant to be ethical in his conduct.
Sir, let's say एक case study पूछा गया. अब उस case study में both approaches can be taken. Ideal approach भी ली जा सकती है, pragmatic approach भी ली जा सकती है. Which approach would you suggest कि वहाँ पर, क्योंकि हम board के सामने बैठे हैं.
You know, you have to take a practical approach without violating ethical norms. Now, if you give me a specific instance, I'll be able to explain that to you. That in this particular instance, you have to be practical about it. We were discussing the other day the ethics paper of 2022, where you had mentioned a case study where certain polluting industries were there and they had not taken their clearance. So we discussed it at length and we came through a very practical solution to a problem. I mean, one extreme of looking at it is just close down those industries because they have taken a faulty certificate or they don't have a certificate. The other is inducing them to take a certificate so that unemployment doesn't happen. So as I had very clearly said, if there is a violation of law, then there is no compromise. Law has to be adhered to. There's no compromise. But if there is a gray area, then attempt should be made to find a solution which has long-term implications. So that is what ethics is all about, and that is how cases should be.
Okay, so I believe approach remains the same, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly the same.
Oh, okay, thank you very much, sir. And sir, last final words that I would like to take from your side as a advice for those who are preparing for PT this year.
My first advice to those that have or that will qualify for the personality test is take the personality test in your stride. I know it's easy for me to say, but attempt to do that. Let this not be a great event of your life so that you're nervous, no? Because it makes you nervous if it's a huge event of your life, if it's in your stride. Now, how do you take that in your stride? If you practice, if you have these group discussions, if you know how to respond to questions, then it becomes your second nature. And there again, if a question is asked, you answer. It's like a written exam where if you practice writing a lot, then a question comes in the examination, you are able to write it. So that is one thing. In the next 2 months, practice as much as you can. Practice to speak. Speak as much as you can because personality test is speaking. To speak to your friends, speak in groups, speak, and that will test you also. So that is one. The second is try and get details about your place of your stay, where you've spent your life, where you've studied. These facts may stand you in good stead because on the basis of that, you'll be able to answer the questions. This is something you should work on. Third, and most importantly, is that develop your communication skills. You still have 2 months, and I have made a very detailed presentation on that and I'd like to repeat that. And this should be done very regularly. Open the editorial page of the newspaper that you read. Pick up an editorial article, not the editorial, but the editorial article. Anyone. Read it aloud in front of a mirror. Do it slowly. Initially, you'll fumble, you'll not be able to speak. Don't worry about it. Everyone does that. Everyone goes through that mill. People may laugh at you that what are you doing reading in front? You qualified for the exam. What the hell are you doing? No, you should read it. That improves your diction, number one. Number two, it will make you aware of a subject which is current because most of the editorial articles are based on some current subject. Number three, you will know how to present your views logically if you do that because all these articles are very logically presented. Then after having done that, you put the paper down and speak out the contents of the article in your own words. There again, your articulation, your diction will improve. You will be able to probably assimilate something which you have read. People keep complaining, sir, I forget what I have read sometimes. This will help you to remember what you've read. This is number two. If you do that, and then when you indulge in group discussion, some of this, what you've read here, will help you subsequently in those discussions also. My suggestion is to all those that qualify for the interview, even before the results are out, who have given the main exam, should get down to this, start reading the editorial article aloud every day, and then speaking it out in their own words. This has to be done regularly. And third, indulge in a group discussion every evening. And finally, relax and smile.
And sir, last question that arises is कि there are some things जिसके बारे में हम बिना वजह परेशान होते हैं. प्रिपरेशन के समय में भी कई सारी चीज़ें ऐसी आती हैं सर, कई ओपिनियंस भी आ जाते हैं जिसके लिए हम परेशान होते हैं. उन चीज़ों को छोड़ना चाहिए, नेचुरल सी बात है सर. वो एक दो चीज़ें अगर आप एनलिस्ट कर सकें.
देखिए, एक तो बिल्कुल क्लियर समझ लीजिए, एंड इट मे साउंड लाइक ए क्लीशे, you have no control whatsoever over the results. You have absolute, I don't think anyone has any control over results. What you have control on is the present now. And if you enjoy these moments, if you enjoy this journey, the chances are that you will reach your destination. Unfortunately, many of us are so obsessed with the final result that we don't enjoy the moments that you are in. So my friends, whether you make it finally to the civil service or not is neither in your hand or in my hand. What is in your hand is this journey, this preparation. So enjoy this journey. Don't feel tense. Don't take it as a burden. I mean, if you have qualified for the personality test, that means that you've done very well in the mains exam. And you should take pride in the fact that you've competing with lakhs of people, you qualified for the personality test, and God willing, you'll qualify in the personality test as well. But don't take it as a burden on your shoulder.
Thank you very much, sir. It was really, wise word. These wise words are going to help a lot of students, and very beautifully explained everything, sir. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. And I hope that this interview that I had today will be, benefiting a number of students in the coming years, not only this year, but in the coming years also. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
StudyIQ IAS. अब तैयारी हुई अफोर्डेबल.